and we are going to focus on counting today.
So now we're entering our first task. Have you ever heard of the math words below? Rote counting, cardinality? Think about them and what you might know about them and what order you would teach them in. Pause the video, take a second to reflect, and have a discussion with your partner or simply just reflect on your own.
Here you see our progression with the best benchmarks. We start the foundation in kindergarten. So kindergarten is the most important grade level. Everything we do impacts our students' number sense and how they work with numbers.
As you can see, what is in the highlighted rectangle is going to be what we will see during this unit.
All right, so the very first thing we're going to talk about is rote counting. Rote counting is the ability to recite numbers in order from memory without any objects or actions that students are doing.
Oh, so it's like counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yeah, exactly. When you want to kind of connect rote counting to when students are learning their letters or their ABCs, just because kiddos know how to sing their ABCs doesn't mean that they really know what the letters look like. So just because they can count to 10, they can say the numbers, doesn't mean they really know the numbers.
Right.
So thinking about that, what does that look like or sound like in a classroom?
So when I was teaching kindergarten, we always sat in a circle on the carpet and just practiced counting around the room or counting in our circle. When we would go stand in line, we would practice counting there too. Really just any counting opportunity you can get throughout the year, because they have to get to 100 by the end of the year, and that doesn't happen overnight.
That's right. So any authentic kind of counting that you can take, any opportunity where students don't have the numbers in front of them, where they can just practice the saying the numbers, is a perfect opportunity for that.
So we're now moving on to cardinality. Cardinality is when you count the number of objects in a set and know that the last number you say is the total number of objects in that set. So here, if I can count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stars, cardinality is the principle of being able to say that I have 5 stars in that set because it's the last number that I counted.
So if a student said 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then you said
how many objects are in the set,
and then the student said there's 5 stars,
they would have a solid understanding of that cardinality principle. Now, the conservation of cardinality is being able to tell the number of objects in a set has not changed, even though it may look different or it's in a different arrangement. So if I have 5 snap cubes in a Ziploc bag and my students can count them and tell me that there are 5 snap cubes in that bag, and when I shake them up, I ask them again, how many objects are in the bag? If they have to recount them, that means they don't have that conservation of cardinality yet, but it's something that we can work towards. If they're able to tell you without counting that there are still 5 because I did not add any or take any away, then they understand that principle.
So if you were doing the stars with your student, if you said, I'm going to take these stars and move them around, but I'm not taking any away and I'm not adding any, how many are there now? And they said 5, that would mean they would have conservation of cardinality.
Yep.
What about in that? Like
same
if the stars
thing.
moved around
if
again?
I didn't add any, if I didn't take any away, there's still 5. They have that understanding.
Okay. But if they have to recount it, then they need to work on that conservation of cardinality.
Yes, they may understand the cardinality principle and they can still count them and tell me there's 5, but it's the conservation of cardinality that really goes to show that if I don't add any, if I don't take any away, even though it may look different or be in a different arrangement, I still have the same number of objects.
All right. And here we have subitizing. Subitizing is instantly seeing how many. So example, when you roll a dice and you automatically know the number that's on the dice, you don't have to count it. You have subitized the numbers on the dice. So when you see the examples that are on the slide, you know these are 5 every single time without having to count them.
A great way to practice this concept is to get dot cards or to include this in a number routine, but it's something you do daily to get them used to seeing the different numbers and the different number of dots. So if I hold up one of those dot cards, they should quickly be able to say there's 5 dots on that card. Okay, well then you could even further it. How did you see the dots? A lot of fun games and number routines that you could get into include subitizing. For example, you could use a splat on a number routine.
I love that number
Me
routine.
too. It is a little more difficult as they get further, but it's a great way for them to see numbers or see dots and make sense of them. It builds that number sense as well. All right, we are now going to talk about one-to-one correspondence. This is when students are able to understand that one object is equivalent to one number. So for example, you see 5 stars on the screen. As I'm counting, I can point to each of those stars and know that it correlates to one number.
So in a classroom, if you have these stars out and a student says 1, they can kind of like match the number 1 to the star. 2, they can match the number 2, 3, 4, 5. So they're matching the object with the number.
Yep. And this also is a great way if you're in a small group or even whole group and you guys are practicing one-to-one correspondence and counting, using counters or snap cubes on a 5 or a 10 frame and physically having the student push those manipulatives into that frame really helps them. So as they're counting, they're going to say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then it'll go back to that cardinality for them being able to tell me I have 5 objects in my set.
All right, so thinking back to our first task when we were thinking about all the words and what they knew, one of the questions was, what do I teach first? So what do we teach first?
There is no order. To be honest, building students' number sense kind of all happens at once. When we start counting, most likely your students will come to you with some sort of counting ability. Maybe they can just count to 5 on their own. Maybe they can't count at all, but this is something that's easy to incorporate and implement into our classroom routines. You can start at the beginning of the year with calendar math. Anything that can get them rote counting will be beneficial to them throughout the year. Then as we go through our units, we're going to build that cardinality, the one-to-one correspondence, and that'll help with counting objects in a set as well as rote counting and building that number sense.
So what I think I hear you saying is this doesn't just happen at the beginning of the year.
Yes.
I have to continue this all year and I can't just like get it done in 1 or 2 units.
No, and honestly, to really meet the needs of all of your students, you'll start this at the beginning of the year, but in order to build that solid foundation of number sense, you have to incorporate it all year long. So keep up those number routines, keep up the calendar math, and even if we're working on shapes, we're still going to continue practice those counting routines as well.
So a lot of the times we hear our students are struggling with number sense, but that's not something that's easy to kind of see, well, okay, well, it's this that they're struggling with. There's all kinds of components that build in with number sense. So to support our students, especially in kindergarten, with understanding and getting a good number sense, we want to make sure that we are providing them with authentic counting experiences, just like we talked about. You would have your kids count as you're walking in line, counting anything that's in the room, counting collections. We talked about practicing all year, not just in 1 or 2 units. And we want to make sure that students are sharing how they counted a number or how they're seeing a number. So like with the example of subitizing, if we had those 5 dots in a 10 frame in a row, a student might say, well, the top row was filled, so I knew that was 5. Or if they had 4 dots and 1 dot over here, they could say, I saw 4 and 1, and 4 and 1 make 5.
Yep, and that'll be a great way to segue into adding and composing numbers within 10, because now when I see numbers in different ways, I'm actually composing those numbers together without really realizing it. So the CRA model can be seen all throughout this counting and cardinality sequence that we're going to start with our students. So with the concrete understanding, we're going to be using manipulatives to practice one-to-one correspondence. We're also going to practice counting objects around the room. Representational thinking is drawing those pictures with that one-to-one correspondence as well, or practicing counting and cardinality, drawing 5 circles and then understanding that there were 5 circles drawn because it's the last number that I said. The abstract thinking really comes into subitizing. It could also be part of rote counting because there's not a concrete tool that goes with rote counting, but this is all objects and all parts of that unit that we're going to be focused on.
All right, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it, and we can't wait to see all those counting happening in the kindergarten classrooms. Bye.
Bye.